Duel here. We had a YCS over the weekend, guys, and we have someone that's topped the YCS with us today. And crazy enough, this YCS happened, I don't want to say last minute because YCS Pasadena was in fact canceled, although a remote duel took place and it was done the same weekend. Funny enough, we're still waiting for the prior YCS to finish up, which is going to happen this weekend. So please introduce yourself to the world, man.
Hi, my name is Aaron Pastrana, and I got top 32 at the most recent YCS with Tri-Zoo DP.
Tri-Zoo DP. So what made you decide to play this deck, this version, versus all the other decks out there, man?
This version was more of a personal meta call for me that I've been testing for the past couple weeks over remote regionals. I feel like Tri-Zoo DP or Tri-DP would be the better variant that I'd prefer to play, but with Protoss Call Dark being so prevalent, I feel like the Zoos cracked that whole board really well. So kind of that sub engine was what I felt was optimal to deal with it. And I didn't really like the play style of Trilear. It's like I'm not really a pure combo player. I'm more mid range.
Did that ever come up to where you were able to play around some protos, like blind protos?
Yeah, all Sorrel players just blind Protoss called Dark. So if you don't hit the right number of hand traps to stop them, you just sort of normal summon a zoo and walk over a whole board. It also helps with like the back row deck matchups, which can be really rough because Ram is just negging so much.
And for those that don't know, this YCS remote duel event was run under four different groups. Like you had a group 1 through 4, and it had 9 rounds of Swiss day one, following the 2 rounds of Swiss the next day, and then top cuts. So it was pretty crazy amount of Yu-Gi-Oh. I heard like some groups weren't complete until like 3 a.m. It was just crazy. So how was your experience overall, man?
It was a pretty good experience. It was like the first remote YCS was probably run a lot smoother because they were actually ready, and this one was sort of a last minute thing that Konami just sort of decided to do, and the bot was having issues from what I heard. But overall, all the Konami reps were doing a great job at communicating with everyone, and it ran smoother during the later rounds.
You have any shout outs before we start this deck profile, man?
Shout out to my sponsor Snoopy TCG. Shout out to all my boys in the Church of Pablo Discord. Orlando, Sam, like everyone, all the Gamers Choice staff. Shout out to Gamers Choice. Like going to that locals, it's a great experience. Hella competitive. It makes you a better player.
Well, without further ado, please take it away with the rest of the deck profile, dude.
First the Tri-Brigade engine. It's really standard. Just triple Fractal, triple Kit, triple Nerval, double Karas, double Revolt. So like nothing really needs to change. This is just optimal ratios. The third Karas never came up, and the third Revolt never really comes up because I only play one Bear Brim, so you can never really search the second one. The extenders and the other play starters is really just Rescue Cat and Rapier. I don't really like Rescue Cat. Rescue Cat didn't really. I don't think Rescue Cat resolved the whole event, but anytime I was normally Rapier, I feel like I just auto win the game because Rapier enables so much. It being able to Foolish Burial a try or a Zoo, and then you can bring that Zoo back with Chalkanine to make Verte. If they stop your Borbo play to go into Zeus, it threatens just two of the most powerful boss monsters Yu-Gi-Oh has to offer, and it's just an insane card. You also play the other two Zoos with Cataroost and Ram. Cataroost is mostly for the Sword Soul matchup, and Ram's for the back row one. And you really just Foolish whatever you need off Rat or search it off Tenki, and it helps you break certain boards. Because if you're playing versus Dogmatica and they have like Imperm Punishment, what are they gonna do to a Ram? And then if you're playing versus Sword Soul or like Dragon Link, what are they gonna do to a Cataroost? Then your hand traps, triple Ash. Ash just hits everything. This should be the first card in any deck. Triple Nibiru. It just helps with the Sword Soul matchup. It just hits so many different combo decks like PK, Drytron, any deck that's trying to Scythe Turbo and trying to do anything degenerate. Nib just sort of stops it when you draw it. And then probably the best hand trap in the format right now, the Triple Gamma with the one driver. This card, anytime it resolved, I just felt like I was winning the game. And if I draw this card with a hand where I'm forced to set up DP or Revolt, because that's not necessarily the main play that I wanted to be making a lot of the time. If I had Gamma there, I felt a lot more confident because DP will just remove itself. Then I can Gamma my opponent and just negate something else on top of that. And then triple Imperm. It's just Imperm is probably one of the more flexible hand traps to go with along with the Ash. The Fusion Destiny brick, Celestial Dasher, and then triple Fusion Destiny because you just want to draw this card. Your board breakers, just triple Droplet. That's all you really need for the deck. It just stops a lot. You can negate Baron Xiao and then normal Zoo, wipe the whole board, or just go off with Tri plays. And you can also Droplet send Name to avoid like Imperm and other droplets. and then your power one-ofs, just IO, Tenki, called by. The deck worked really well versus the event. The only thing that I'd really change overall in the future is I would cut the cats for Foolish Braille and Monster Reborn. I feel like these are just other play starters and other extenders in a way that cat isn't, because without playing cross out in the deck like we were before, I feel like cat is just a lot more of a fragile play, and it's not really a play that ends you on much more than your standard try lines, because try can end on the optimal board, which is a lot of the time Appa Revolt. Still, just that board is powerful, and it's really hard for decks like Sword Soul Tenyi to break if you draw additional hand traps like Ashes and Imperm. And like even that into a Nibiru, you just revolt, search a name, then Shureg will get tributed by the revolt, you search a name, and then you have so much follow up next turn that you just kill your opponent.
What's that main deck count, man?
42 cards. Couldn't quite cut it down to 40, but honestly, if I fit these two into the deck, I'm probably just gonna cut Cat and then cut the Cataroos just to make it a nice 41 for consistency. And then, do you want me to go over the side or the extra?
Whichever's fine.
All right. Extra deck is relatively standard. I feel like one Almirage, this card is phenomenal. It just makes Kit a starter. And also, a lot of the time when you do Kit into Almirage, send the Nerval, add a Karas, pitch special Karas. If the Karas gets negated, you're not under the Tri-Brigade lock, no matter what negates it, Imperm, Veiler, Droplet, whatever. So you could just take the Karas, take the Almirage, link it into an Anaconda, and then you have a DP to at least do something. So this card just flexes into a lot. And the protection effect is really helpful when like trying to break boards again, especially into a DP or versus the Dogmatica matchup, like the Invoke matchup. It protects you from punishment, which is a really big card that you don't want to be dealing with. For the Link 2s, you got Double Dragon Lord. This card's insane. Anytime I summon this card, it would just put me so far ahead that it never really mattered what my opponent did, especially if I had already have Tenki like up on the field, which I just hard draw that like I'm God. Card glued to my hand. Ulti was worth the upgrade. The only part that I'm iffy with, but it didn't really come up that much during the YCS, and mostly just came up in testing versus specific matchups, was only one Farragut, which I don't really want to be playing. I think 2 is 100% correct, but you don't necessarily have the most space because you have to fit in the 3 Zeus, the Zeus, the Verte, and the DP. So you just have to make do with the 1 and use it to the best of your ability. A lot of the times I like to try to properly summon it so you can bring it back off Revolt to try to cycle cards with the draw as much as you can. Then the other one of you get the Bear Broom effect. This card 2 actually comes up a lot, especially since you don't have the second Farragut. It's a really great way to extend, especially if you Celestial draw into 2 bad cards, you just get rid of them for a Tri-Name guarantee. Because a lot of the time I find myself not even needing to make the Revolt play depending on my hand. Predaplant, it's just the best Link 2 in the game. It should be banned. I don't know why this card is legal. The only Link 3 that I play, which kind of makes some play lines kind of awkward, is Doomeagle. I don't think Rugal is good enough to warrant being the only Link 3, and you only have enough space for one. And I feel like Doomeagle having an actual like relevant effect versus like a bunch of graveyard central decks like PK and Drytron, and also beating the entire existence of DP, being able to shuffle back the Celestial and the DP because it's quick effect, just it feels nice. And I feel like DD Crow is good in the deck, but you don't necessarily want to just play it as a searchable option, although you can. I tested it a lot, especially on remote regionals, and it just never really came up where I was searching it because I was just out grinding my opponent to the point where it wouldn't have mattered, or I just needed the extra name to kill them instead of getting a DD Crow that would have extended the game longer than I wanted to. And then you have your Link 4s, you have the access code. This just makes OTKs easy. If you end on a Shureg, that's 3K, this is game. If you end on a Nib, this is 53, that's game. It just steals games that you probably shouldn't win. You got the Apo, this is your primary play. Game 1, blind, if you win die roll, you always go for Apo Revolt to the best of your ability. And if you're forced to make DP because your hand isn't good enough, or your opponent stops you enough that you have to go there, then it is what it is. But this card just beats so many decks, especially going first. They only really have Imperm Droplet to deal with it, and if they don't have it, they kind of just lose at that point. Then you have double Shureg. I feel like this is the only try card that you need to play 2 of in the extra, because you get 1 off Revolt, and then a lot of the times the name you get, if you don't can OTK, you just use the second one to go Burr, like Shureg or Banish. You could also link Shureg off into a Farishit if you haven't used it. Search your Zeus, special a Zoo, make Zeus, win the game. The deck hasn't really changed much. It's still the same 3 Zoos. The only ones with like relevant effects. Tiger Mortar is good in combination with Rat because whatever you send, you reattach it, you get that effect, and then you stack a Borbo on top. And then Chakanan actually comes up a lot when you need to make DP off just a Rat here, because Rat's a 1-card link too. And then for the final 2 extra deck cards, you have the Zeus and the DP, which is just your big payoffs.
And thanks for explanation. Yeah, space is extremely tight because you're not only doing the Zoo engine, the Tri-Brigade engine, and you're throwing in the DPE stuff in there too. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really obnoxious. It was hard to like build around, and it was hard to get used to. I feel like a build that's becoming a little bit more popular after the big Coliseum tournament was just playing 3 Bird Call, 3 Turquoise Warbler, 1 Cobalt Sparrow for link plays, because that gives you a smaller Zeus engine to do the similar thing. But in that deck, you can't really play DP, and I only really saw that list a couple days before the event, so I wasn't able to test it thoroughly enough for me to feel confident. I feel like for hand traps, these are the ones you really need to be playing. Triple Lancia and triple Droll. These just cover what your main deck don't, and these are probably the best going second options you have, especially for decks like Tri-Lear and PK. And then this also hits Drytron. Like these 6 hand traps post siding cover the entire rest of the meta that your main deck hand traps don't. But your main deck hand traps already put in enough work that it's honestly really hard to have side patterns where these fit into the deck a lot of the time. And then at that point, I believe you're playing 15 plus hand traps plus droplet going second, so you just break boards or make it so your opponent doesn't set up. And then the only other board breaker I play in the deck is a triple evenly matched. I feel like this is just the best one primarily for back row decks and striker, because those are the 2 matchups that I respected the most going into the deck, because those were the only matchups that I felt were really going to be an issue. And I actually lost the striker in top 32 because I just bricked game 2, which was really unfortunate. And then you have the best going first option that I feel in the deck for this format is triple Solemn. I didn't necessarily like D barrier because my deck needs to respect the back row deck matchups and the striker matchups, which I feel like Solemn does really nicely. And then your last 3 cards is just back row removal, 1 red reboot, because it's just the best anti-floodgate, anti-trap card in the game, and 2 cosmic, because you can't really play twin with Lord of Heavenly around. It just doesn't really make much sense.
Okay.
A lot of your back row removal loses to Lancia, but if a back row deck is drawing 3 plus spell traps and a Lancia, you're probably losing that game, and you just go game 3 and hope DP or Revolt will get you there. Realistically, this is probably the most flexible deck of the format, and it's really the deck building comes along to you as a player because you can fit cards like Pank, Prosperity, Crossout, DD Crow, Veiler, Minecon. Like there are so many powerful staples that depending on how you build the deck, you can make it fit. But this is just how I chose to play for the YCS, and it just apparently went really well.
Hey man, well congrats on topping where almost 2,000 players entered this tournament. It's a big tournament, man.
Yeah, it was crazy difficult. You got a bunch of crazy names like Pack on the bubble, Jesse Cotton, and all like Sam Chung, all the good players in there. It was hard to just cope and try to dodge them or just play them and win. And I mean, I did enough of that to get me to top 32.
Nice. And again, congrats and thanks again for the video, man.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me here, Bortle.
No problem. And listeners, if not a part of Bortle Nation, stuff for Bortle, it's that easy and it's free. Oh god, yes. Bortle out.